Well, today we're talking about how to win in a highest and best offer situation in real estate, and we're starting right now. Hey, my name is Sansalone, and I'm a real estate agent in Hampton Roads, Virginia. And if it's your first time here, welcome. Hit the subscribe button. I do videos every Wednesday about real estate in Hampton Roads, and hit the bell notification alongside of it, and so you can get notified as soon as I do a video, so it's fresh. Well, today we're talking about how to win highest and best offer situation in real estate as the buyer. And this is part one of a series about highest and best offers and how to win them. I'm running into this quite frequently because buyers are ready to make offers on houses, but there are a lot of houses that are in high demand, and so we're often finding that there are multiple 2, 3, 4 or more offers on a house at the same time. You might be in that multiple offer situation, and you want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward to give the seller most reason to accept your offer as opposed to somebody else's. So what I want to do first is help you see what the seller sees and put yourself in their shoes so that you can make your best offer that meets the most seller needs as possible. I want to break down the criteria for why a seller accepts an offer. So there are three main components to what makes a seller want to accept somebody's offer. Number one is money. So with any offer, obviously, the more money you offer the seller, the more likely it is for them to accept it. That seems pretty reasonable. But there are other variables at hand, not just the money, that I want to talk about. Number two is time. Now, sellers value their time just as like they value their money. The time to accept your offer and risk taking your offer over somebody else's, the time it takes to close, the time that it takes to go through all the contingencies. Time has a lot of different meanings in a closing transaction. So the seller values their time in each of the steps of the process. You can make an offer on a house and not want to close for 3 months, but if they want to close real soon, you could offer them more money, but they might not be motivated to take your offer because they want to close fast. So the more efficient and expedited your offer can be, the more attractive that can be to a seller. Then number three is security. They want to make sure that your offer is going to happen. There's one other thing I want you to keep in mind as you're making your offer, which is thinking about how the housing market is in your area and how the housing market is for that specific house. Those are two different things. So when people tell you, oh, you're in a buyer's market or you're in a seller's market, well, what does that mean? First of all, does that mean that you're in a buyer and seller's market nationally, generally speaking? Well, that does not necessarily mean that it's a buyer or seller's market in like our local area, like for instance, Hampton Roads. Just because there's a lot of houses selling quickly in Hampton Roads doesn't mean that they'll sell quickly in other cities, right? But for Hampton Roads specifically right now, we're in a seller's market, generally speaking. But that doesn't mean that every house is going to sell immediately when it hits the market. Houses still have to be priced accordingly and show well in order for it to sell at the appropriate price. So it's important to look through all the factors that make up the specific housing market for that house that you're interested in, and talk to your real estate agent to figure out how likely that type of house might come up again in the future. If it's you could call it a rare opportunity, there's a good chance that if you like that house and it just hit the market, somebody else or several other people might also be interested in that house as well. So even if there are other houses that you like that have been sitting a while, but that one just hit and might be also in high demand, you might be more apt to want to act faster with that house, even though others you might not have to move as fast with. So knowing the specifics of the house and the dynamics of how motivated people are to want that house is very, very important. So all this is good to keep in mind for when you do get multiple offers. It might help you to determine how motivated the other people are going to bid to get the house that you're offering on. It will also help if you're able to beat other buyers so that the highest and best offer situation isn't even needed. So let's get into some of the strategies that factor in with the money, time, and security that help you as a buyer put your best foot forward to give the seller what they want and also get you what you want, which is your offer accepted. The one thing to always consider is that sellers are more than anything looking at the bottom line of the transaction. How much money are they making after all the contingencies, after all the potential repairs, after all the closing costs they pay, everything? How much are they actually making? So the more money you think you can help make the seller, or the more concessions that you give them, the more likely they might be to take your offer. For instance, you could offer less closing cost assistance. So like in Hampton Roads, it's typical for buyers to often ask for some form of closing costs, whether it's 3% of the sales price, 2% of the sales price, 2.5%, 4%, 5% sometimes, and more. You might find that asking the seller to pay less of your closing costs for that offer might be something that makes them more apt to want to take your offer. You might be making a higher sales price than what someone else might be offering for their house, but if the net proceeds, or the amount that the seller is actually making after all the money is taken out, if they actually are making less on your transaction than on another offer, then they're going to probably take the other offer even though the sales price looks higher. It's not all about the sales price. All the things you ask from the seller are decreasing the amount that they're making at the end. In addition to that, if you ask the seller to close in 2 or 3 months, for instance, as opposed to maybe a month, that means more money that they're having to pay in order to keep the house available for you. So keep all these things in mind to help you determine what you might think the bottom line is for the seller. So instead of maybe asking for more closing costs, maybe ask for a little bit less and close sooner. That will give them more reason to want to take your offer because they're now paying less mortgage payments and they're paying less of your closing costs, and they're going to get the price that they want. And one thing that I think is very important when making multiple offers is for your real estate agent to ask the other agent, the seller's agent, what is the most important thing or the most important things for that seller? Now, usually agents will say, well, the most money, give me the most money as much as possible. Well, that's true, and that's sometimes a cop-out answer, but sometimes agents will tell you specific things that the sellers appreciate. For instance, fewer contingencies, maybe no home inspection, maybe a faster closing is most important to them. Maybe they need to actually delay the closing a while because they're needing to move later in the season. Maybe a longer closing is better for them. You just often don't know. And so it's good to know that each seller situation is different, and asking first what's important to them can really give you a leg up because not every agent does that. And if you get your highest and best offer accepted, click here to find out what happens if the house actually is worth less than what you offered.